A while ago, a friend of mine gave me some really good advice that I made the mistake of not taking to heart. That led to me burning out completely and leaving my life in New York behind to do this 2-month-long 11,000-mile motorcycle trip. And it took that 11,000-mile motorcycle trip to realize that that piece of advice is how I need to start living my life. And that advice is only do it if you love it. When I was on the road, a lot of people kept asking me why I would do this kind of trip, so I figured I'd make this video to kind of tell my story of why I took this trip and what I learned. So I kind of made the decision to actually go on the trip about a month before I actually left, and during that time, it was the first time in my life where I was kind of feeling some sort of legitimacy or success in what I was doing for work. And yeah, I was doing way too many hours than I should have been. That was because I kind of saw the more projects I take in, the more hours I put in, the more I put into this work thing that corresponds to more dollars, the more legitimacy I could feel. But yeah, it was more money focused. Like each project I was taking on only was because it made more money, and because it was freelance, you know, there's no kind of ceiling. It's just however much you personally want to take on. And for me, I try to take on way more than I should have. But eventually got burnt out from this. Like there was only so long that I could have done this at that pace. And I got to a point where I needed something completely different. So I needed to change my life in some capacity. So that's when I kind of made that decision to just hit the road with no definite end or destination in sight and just go. So I dropped all my work except for one gig that is just part-time, and it gives me a lot of flexibility to do it at my own hours and pick my schedule. And I knew that I liked it enough to keep doing it while I was on the road, or have that energy to keep doing it while I was on the road. And I needed to have something, because or else I wouldn't have kept going. So I stuck with this one gig. I think many of you kind of know already that mixing work and this kind of adventure where you're moving every single day and you have no predictability and all that is not really, you know, that good, and it's kind of better to just separate the two. But I didn't really have that much of a choice. I really wanted to leave New York from being burnt out, and I didn't want to wait that long until I had enough savings to do it in that way where I could just focus on the trip and that's it. So I just went for it. And in the beginning, this kind of worked out pretty well. So on the days that I would work, at some point on the trail, I would kind of leave, go into a town where they had a cafe or something like that, where I would then be able to download all the stuff I needed to download, charge my laptop and charge my phone and charge whatever else I needed to do. And then before it got dark, I would go back to the woods, find a place to camp for free, and then finish off whatever I needed to edit on my laptop. And then that way, the next day, I would kind of have that work ready to upload by the time I got to the next town. So this kind of gave me a cool balance where I would still be able to work and still be able to travel and be in the woods and all that. But also when I wasn't working, I was in like full adventure mode. I was like pulling my bike out of mud and rivers like 10 times a day, sometimes on some really gnarly roads. I had to deal with trying to worry about running out of gas or getting stranded somewhere because of mechanical issues, or when I crashed on the highway at 55 miles per hour and had to do an engine swap, and also had a kind of bad injury on my ankle that really hurt for a while. A lot of stuff that happens that these kind of trips typically, you know, throw at you. I had to deal with all of it on this trip, and also had to have that aspect of work. But on the bright side, I was having like some of the most amazing times of my life where I would listen to music and just scream the lyrics out of my helmet and have literally no worries, sometimes even forgetting where I was in the world or what time it was or what day it was, and that felt really, really amazing. And at the same time, I was becoming way more comfortable with the whole mix of work and travel and the whole aspect of being challenged every day and having a lot of unpredictability in my life. And at this point in the trip, I started having a crazy amount of freedom that I felt, and this kind of came from realizing that I was gonna be able to endure whatever this trip threw at me, because this is really what I want to do. And work-wise, I was still always doing the best work that I could, and really looked forward to working at the end of the day. Even if I was like really physically exhausted, I would do the work and then completely pass out and have like an excellent 10 hours of sleep, no matter what. That's something like I got really good at from this trip, just sleeping anywhere. As for the work aspect, it's a little bit harder to express, but editing is something that, even though I'm not even close to scratching the surface of the knowledge that I want to acquire, it's something that I've been doing since I was 14 years old. And so by now, it's something that is really familiar to me, or just the act of being behind the computer and the software is really familiar and really comforting. So being able to have that in my life still, when everything else in the trip and like every day was completely unpredictable, and I had nobody to really talk to or really connect with in the moment, and being far away from family and friends and all of that, it kind of helped to ground me in some weird way, just having that familiar thing. And eventually I became a lot more comfortable with this whole like mix of work and travel. And on one of the days, I just realized that I was doing exactly what I've always wanted to do, or just wanted to live my life, which is to experience as much as humanly possible and to tell stories at the same time, to edit and kind of have that mix. And even though I was still working, it felt very different than when I was in New York. Like when I was in New York, it was more about how can I completely like work in a systematic way to maximize my time and get as much work done as possible, and not really paying too much attention into the actual work, or just spending time to enjoy the actual aspect of editing that I like to do. Then I was kind of brought to this feeling that I felt when I was much younger, which was before I entered college, or which is before I started turning this hobby or just learning how to edit into a commercial endeavor. And I freaking loved it. I was making travel videos. I was just exploring more. I wanted to learn more about editing. I wanted to learn more about storytelling and just read or watch different creators just for the fun of it, and didn't really think about money too much at this point. I was enjoying as much as possible when I was riding. I was listening to music. I was taking as much of life in as I possibly could. And after about 11,000 miles and like 2 months into the trip, after crashing, having a motor swap, having a bunch of mechanical problems, being stranded, and having some amazing moments in my life, meeting like some really, really amazing people, I realized that I wanted to get off the road. And it's because I realized that I needed to follow that advice that my friend gave me a while back, which was only to do it if you love it. And I think for a while, work-wise, I forgot about that. And this whole trip and all the things that I went through helps me realize that. And in the end, that's why I did this trip without knowing. That's why I did this trip. So yeah, thank you for listening to my story. Peace.